Welcome back to another special episode of these DM clinics. It is my absolute pleasure and delight to have the wonderful, amazing, brilliantly creative Rachel Zant join us on our clinic today. And Rachel is here to talk about, surprise, surprise, feelings. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us today.
Hey, awesome. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to share a few slides because that does help me to talk through some of these things and helps you to not just stare at my face. So there we go. I will just start with my first slide here. Yeah, how to infuse more emotion into your appeals. And we're talking about all the feelings here. So I'm Rachel, and I have a company called Pen with a Purpose, and I've been writing direct response materials for nonprofits for almost 25 years. And I've worked with you, John, for a number of years. And hey, there's Mr. Ron the
Hi,
cat who
Ron.
decided to jump right on top of my what do you call it? My iPad. Okay, so let's jump in. I love starting with this quote because with feelings, I think a lot of us feel nervous about sharing feelings, but I want to remind you what the great Dr. Maya Angelou said, that people often will forget what you said or what you did, but people don't ever forget how you made them feel. And that people are giving to your organization because of how they feel, how they want to feel, or how they maybe feel because they've lost somebody or they're honoring someone they loved. But feelings are in everything that we do, right? So just remember that, like, feelings are important. We can't just ignore them. And the act of giving generally makes people feel good. But I've heard stories where people are giving because of something that happened in their childhood that made them feel bad. And now they're giving years later to help and try and make them feel better. But there are so many feelings, right? Like, there's so many feelings. There's positive ones and negative ones, and we kind of can get stuck in all these feelings and what should we do about them? Is it okay to talk about all these feelings or not? Right? Feelings can make us feel a bit scared and awkward, and then we just avoid them, right? We avoid strong feelings because they're uncomfortable. And especially in a work environment, we tend to just sort of try to be professional, right? Like, God forbid that we do something that might make us look unprofessional or that might offend our donors. So, what I say is one of the things is to make you feel a little bit more comfortable about using feelings in your work is you need to feel comfortable just using feelings in general, right? So, how do you feel right in this moment? Just take some time now and then to think about that. You could take some time right in this very moment to just take a little deep breath and just kind of settle down in your seat or, wiggle your toes if you're standing like you are, John.
Mhm.
And just look inside and just actually try to name what it is you're feeling in this moment. That's a really good practice to go into. And what you might find is you're feeling
Well,
multiple things at any one time, right? Like, this feelings wheel is a great thing to start looking at. Helps you to also name different feelings, right? We've got the core ones in the middle, like happy and sad and angry or fearful. But as we move out in the wheel, we see there's all kinds of different emotions that can help us to really name what it is that we're feeling, right? We've got from angry, it can go all the way up to jealous or betrayed or just sort of indignant. So I just want to get you thinking about the fact that there's so many different kinds of feelings out there and that it's okay and important that we use these feelings in the work that we do. So I get a lot of questions from people about like, how do you even get emotional stories? Like, I don't know how to get them. We just write from our CEO all the time and say the same thing all the time. So I say, like, you have to talk to people, right? There are so many stories out there, but you really have to talk to people and get them to share their stories in an emotional way. And that means creating an open environment where people feel comfortable sharing these stories with you. And I do have a article up on my website that I posted about that, which has a little more information about how you could set up interviews and some questions that you could ask.
why
I'm
is
going
it
to share. Sorry, go ahead.
Why is it so frightening or scary to either ask people about their feelings or to share your own feelings in general?
I think it's because we feel out of control. Like for me, when I get emotional, I will start to cry or my eyes will tear up. And I think it makes us feel out of control and vulnerable. And, like it opens something up to somebody else that maybe we will feel judged by them or they will not respect us anymore. When what I find is when I do that and I open up, the other person wants to open up with me and wants to be more vulnerable and feels more connected with me because I've taken that risk to open up, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's one example. I often will get, or you probably have these sort of basic, factual based program write ups. And this is what my client gave to me to help me write a direct mail appeal. And after reading it, I still didn't really know what this program was about. So I asked if I could speak to the program director. And this is where, in the space of, half an hour conversation, she told me just a beautiful, heart-wrenching story that illustrated in a very feeling way what this organization did, which was this young girl was trafficked by her parents for like quite some time. She's only 13 years old. So I turned this into a lift note from this program director where she told me this. It was always about the eyes for her, and that the eyes told the story of this young girl's soul. And when she first looked into Alicia's eyes, they were lifeless. And she went on to tell the story of how through time and patience and working with this organization, by a few years later, her eyes were filled with hope and life, and she was going to prom and she was doing all the things that a young girl should be doing. And through the rest of this appeal, we asked for funding to open a new office that would help 500 more young people like this young girl. But this one emotional story was the key to telling that and making it feel like there was impact in the story that we were telling. Here's another example of um, an interview turned into an appeal for an organization called Canteen, where they help young people impacted by cancer. And I spoke with this young boy, Jacob, who lost his mom when he was just 13 years old. And he was bullied for having lost his mom. So this organization actually saved his life and was the reason he was still here today. So I wrote, it was hard to hear that my mom had cancer when I was 12 years old, right? Losing my mom was devastating. I felt so sad, lost, and alone. Like these are core feelings that this young man had. And the donors, through their gift, helped him to be who he is today. Very impactful, right? Another example from the same organization, another follow-up letter, we told this emotional story from a different perspective, from somebody who worked at a camp that the young boy went to, and they told this beautiful story of an honoring ceremony where the young people would actually write letters to their passed away loved ones and share all the feelings that they hadn't expressed to them where they were still alive. And then they would walk down to the water and they would put these letters into the water in dissolvable paper. And they would let them just go into the water and they would release their feelings. Like it's just so powerful, these stories. And there's so many feelings. And people don't want to talk about death and grief, but these are the stories that will inspire your donors to give again. And then a little more back to less kind of emotional like that, but still like a theater company. People are passionate about theater. And I talked to this one company and they just couldn't quite figure out how to write a letter in a way that would engage their donors. They were writing a letter that was from all 8 of their founders. And it didn't quite jive. So I had a conversation with their managing director and I said, like, why do people give? And she said, because they just love theater and they love the type of theater we put on that's multimedia. We hire all the people, we pay them really well, but people are generally just passionate about theater. So that's what I wrote in this letter, is really focusing on, you love good theater, right? That's a feeling too, love, passion. But sometimes, I guess, right, John, like we can't really, oh, sorry, we're gonna say something.
I was gonna say something. I think the key thing that I want to point out is because I do know you obviously
Yeah.
very well, is that part of what you're saying here is because you're very feelings. Jen, love my business partner, same way, because you're a very feelings kind of person.
Mhm.
That's how you can conduct yourself in your craft, which is interviewing and writing and telling people stories and stuff. And that's it. I think that's important because anyone who's watching this video is you have to kind of have some in touchness with your own feelings, because if you're going to get like that blur from programs, you have to go and emotionally talk to and listen to
Yeah.
another human or whatever to emotionally hear their emotional story. Because if you go into it with a logical, like, yeah, I asked him this question, yeah, I did this, that's again the same thing you're gonna get out of it. So you have to use your feelings through this whole process. And I think, like, again, I know it to be very intuitive for you and very intuitive for people like Jen and stuff, to like that's how you are in life and in your work and stuff. But you have to bring, and even my own, like the stuff I was talking about too, is you have to really be thoughtful and present and emotional in this work. Like there's no halfway about it. So anyways, that I think you kind of like, you're really 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 good at what you do, just like Jen's really, really good at what she does, which is why you guys are so in demand. But part of it is, for people watching, is you do have to connect yourself to your own feelings first before you can do this kind of work. And it's really really important. You can't show up, half-assed in it,
No,
That's
you can't, yeah, at all. Exactly. No, thank you for making that point.
right.
I think, yeah, exactly. Like in interviews all the time, that's where it's a connection and building a rapport and a trust with the person you're talking to and making them feel safe and that you want to hear their feelings. Because in all our interactions, I think there's a point in there where you either feel like that other person cares about you and wants to hear and share your truth, or you're just having a superficial
Yeah.
conversation
And
where,
you may have feelings when they share their feelings, and your feelings could be just like when you and I talk. Sometimes I see you have feelings, and I'm like, well, I have feelings because of the way you feel, and and that's a decision we're making in
yeah,
this kind of context relationship. So again, it's like, so you can't do this halfway. It's an all-in kind of way to be, right? So, anyways,
yeah, I
yes.
agree. Yeah, absolutely. But I think sometimes this is why kind of the segue to imagination is, sometimes I think, there's a lot of discussion right now about ethics and what sort of stories is it okay to share and when can you share them, and I'm all in for that conversation, and that's why I like to talk directly with people and have them share their feelings and their story in the way they want to share them, and be fully all in with being okay with sharing their story the way they want to share it. But sometimes we have to use our imaginations and really dive into how would I feel in this situation? Because some people don't feel comfortable sharing their emotions. So, or how can I take this to the next level and use a little bit more of emotion? So I know this is one example that you and I worked on, John, where we used the power of sense and imagining what it would have felt like to walk into a hospital operating room and have it be silent. And the idea was that one of the pieces of equipment in this operating room had broken down suddenly. So, how can you think outside the box and use imagination and sense, and other ways to incur the or bring in that emotion that you may not be getting from an actual person in an interview? And just one last example of, you can use inanimate objects. And everybody knows, and I'm sure you're doing this in lots of your other sessions, but Agents of Good is experts in this, having inanimate objects tell stories. And here's one that I did work on. writing little stories from different pieces of hospital equipment, right? Or a band-aid, which said, like, you give me the power of healing many humans, big and small, right? Like, that's a band-aid speaking to a donor, but it's beautiful and powerful and shares feelings, right? So, um, I love this quote, and I just want to end with it, that authenticity, right? That we talked about. It's a collection of choices. So, everyone, we all have the choice. And some days we can choose, no, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to connect. I don't want to. I'm going to not. But when we do, and when we choose to show up and we choose to be real and honest and let our true selves be seen, amazing things can happen. And it's the same in the work that you do and the fundraising that you do when you connect and be authentic and vulnerable with your donors. I believe that amazing things can happen. I have a quick little QR code in here for a direct mail Kickstart guide. And then I just thanks. And if anyone wants to connect with me, please feel free. And I totally appreciate you having me on here.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Rachel, as always. And again, it's like one of those things that's really, really easy to talk about showing up in this work in a emotionally thoughtful and vulnerable manner that like you said, majority of people are terrified by being like that in professional, quote unquote, professional environments. And the more that changes, the better off this sector will be. So thank you. It's a very important topic to have today, so thanks.
Thank you.
I will see you guys next time.